So here comes a CPT question on repairs. This is from Linda. She said, hello, what is the correct CPT code for this repair? Is it a simple wound repair or 43870 or another code altogether? And what are the correct ICD-9 diagnosis codes? And also, what CPT ED level charge would you use? So let me go to the answer sheet so that you can see it in context here. So we've got an 80-year-old patient presenting to the emergency room from the nursing home with bleeding from the gastrostomy site. Remember, gastrostomy, ostomy means an artificial opening. So they had probably a bag inserted there. So they have a gastrostomy site. The ER physician documents multiple minor skin tears around the stoma site. Stoma is just another word for that opening. The ER physician sutures the skin with 4.0 silk sutures. The patient has a history of hypertension, dysphagia, which is difficulty swallowing, from an old CVA, and insulin requiring type 2 diabetes. The triage nurse listed the patient's current meds, and they're verified by the ED physician. So, what she had suggested was 43870, which when you look it up is closure of a gastrostomy surgically. In this note that we read, it didn't talk about closing it. It just talked about repairing it around the opening, so the opening was had some skin tears. And you can see they really kind of minimized it. They said minor skin tears, and they just did sutures. It didn't talk about they had to do layered sutures and da-da-da. It just talked about minor skin tears, did sutures. Okay. So when you get into coding for the integumentary system for the skin, you want to be looking for that. What was the location of it, which in this case, around the gastrostomy, that's going to be on your trunk, your abdomen area. And when you see skin sutures, you want to think of a repair. We talk about stitches. I went to the ER and I had to have how many stitches. But when we start to become coders, we have to think about more medical terms, and they call those repairs: simple, intermediate, or complex repairs. And since this just said minor skin tears, we're going to consider it a simple repair. If it was a deep wound, If it was a deep wound, then we would use we'd use an intermediate or a complex repair, but this one was a simple one. Now, with the integumentary system and repairs, we normally need to know how many stitches or what was the length of the repair. This documentation did not provide it, so we're going to have to go with the lowest amount when we get into our CPT manual. So I hope this works. I put a link here for... Yay. Okay, good. I'm trying to do this more, taking a scan of particular pages versus using my document camera. So those in the replay club that are getting all of these handouts nicely done by Ruth can have these as an attachment. So here you can see my manual up close, exactly how I bubble and highlight and make notes for myself. So I'm taking you to the repair codes, and what you want to look at is we've got simple is our first group. And if you look at the first bubble, if you will, the first grouping, it's simple. And what's the location? Scalp, neck, axilla, external genitalia, trunk, and or extremities. So when I'm teaching this, I say, remember, it's location, location, location. You got to get in the right bubble first. So here's this one, and here's that trunk that we were talking about. And if we go over on the other side, we'll see the second bubble for simple repairs is just different location: face, eyes, earlids, nose, lips, and or mucous membranes. And then the third bubble, oops, that was the first. All right, so we got two bubbles for that. Okay. And then it goes on, it repeats the same pattern with intermediate repairs and with complex repairs. So your first job, is it simple, intermediate, or complex? We determined it's simple. Then the second job is what's the location? And we determined it's the trunk. Then we need to know measurements once we're within that bubble. Since we weren't provided with any, we have to go with the lower amount or query the physician. I don't have the physician here to ask. So that brings us to 12001. That's how, my mind works, how I would, attack the coding for that. So I would have gone to the index and looked up repairs, and it would have brought me to this page. Now, regarding the E&M level, I don't normally use these tables in the front, but I thought it lent itself well to this particular one. If you think back to this brief little note, okay, and for E&M coding, we need to look at the history, the exam, and the medical decision making. So the history and exam, was it problem focused, expanded problem focused, detailed, or comprehensive? And it was problem focused. It's very straight, very, very problem focused. So far it's a 99281. So now looking at the medical decision making, they basically said, yep, the skin's torn and we're going to repair it. Very straightforward medical decision making. So because they're both showing up in the same column, 99281 would be the code that I would use for that under emergency department services. And then regarding the diagnostic codes, Alicia did this, and I'll let her speak to that portion of this question.
Because I like the ICD-9.
Mm-hmm.
These are your choices that you're going to come up with. Again, that keyword is complication. There was a complication with the gastrotomy. Sorry, I said that wrong.
Gastrostomy.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Gastrostomy. Whenever you have any type of a device, you can look under complication device. But with this, there's actually in your index complication gastrotomy. And there are 4 that you can look at. It's going to take you to 536.4 and tell you you're going to need another digit. So every one of those, I have exactly what you'd see in your book. So we have gastrotomy complication unspecified, but so you're thinking, okay, well, yeah, that could be 0.41. You got to throw that out. There's no indication of an infection. And if there was an infection, see, you always want to pay attention because they're going to tell you, yeah, got to put in what the infection is, use an additional code for the organism, stuff like that. Always pay attention to that. 0.42, mechanical complication. Was there a mechanical complication? No, nothing happened to the actual stoma or anything that was around, as far as anything coming out of the body or you know what I'm trying to say. But the one that you're going to want is the other complication, because the only way you can determine that that's the right one is to look at your choices. And none of the other choices apply. And you don't want to use unspecified if you don't have to, because they tell you to code to the highest specificity. Do you know what the complication was? Yes, it was documented. So it isn't unspecified, it's specified. Is there a code for that? No, but there is a code for other. So that is the code that you're going to use, the 0.49. Now, keep in mind that you want to stay away from unspecified if you can. Look at your documentation, look around the code, make sure that, that's why you go to, you could even go to 536 and then, then get to 4 and then look at what you're offered. If none of those apply, go with unspecified. If you find one that could apply, like other, meaning there's just not a code for it, unspecified means he didn't tell you what the complication was. You have the documentation, so you'd code the 0.49. As a general rule, though, this is an exception. Most unspecifieds end with a 9, just so you know, an ICD-9. Now, a heads up about ICD-10, though, I'll throw this out for you. You're not going to have very many unspecifieds. They're going to actually give you choices. Now, I didn't go in and look at ICD-10. I didn't have time. But I would assume that if you go in and you look at the codes that translate for this, then you're going to see a list of common complications that occur. they ran out of numbers, honestly. So, you know, you're going to be able to code to a higher specificity with ICD-10 than you would have been able to, and you won't see a lot of others or unspecified out there, which is good for the coder.
Right. But it'll be the same old frustration with getting the physicians to document.
That's true. If the documentation is not there, then you've got an unspecified. And real quick about that as well, they really push this at the in a lot of those seminars and classes that we took, is that you want to. This is good for the patient too, because when you just have other there, that leaves it open for the next doctor to say, well, what was the complication? You know, and if you can be very specific, he looks at the code, it'll be ultimately better care for the patient.
Get more CPC exam tips, coding certification training, and CEU credits. Go to www.codingcertification.org.